She's outspoken. She's not afraid to ask tough questions. She's not afraid to speak her mind. You've read her column. Maybe you're a fan on Facebook. No topic is off limits. Straight to the point. There's no chaser. You're now watching Straight Talk with Carla Zuill.
Hi. Welcome to Straight Talk with Carla Zuill. And of course, I'm your host, Carla. Well, today we bring to you an interesting show. I have in studio with me Linda Miser. Linda, welcome.
Thank you.
Now, we've brought Linda here today because we hear about it all the time. You have people who don't like this sort of person. They judge people based on how they look or what they like. Well, if you don't know Linda, Linda is gay, and she's proud of it. Linda, what I wanted to talk to you about is, when did you realize that you were gay?
I don't think I realized it. It just has always been that way. You know, I've always been the person that I am. What I did realize is that other people didn't think it was right. So that made me feel like it was something wrong. But I think I've always known.
Well, I guess it brings into the argument of, is gay biological or not? Now, you're saying you always knew. But is it a feeling? I mean, were you attracted to girls or you just didn't like boys? Can you elaborate?
Well, it's funny that you say that I didn't like boys, you know, because that's the general concept, isn't it? But it wasn't that I made a decision not to like boys or that I didn't like boys. It's like that first feeling when you have any type of sexual arousing or whatever. For you automatically felt it towards a boy. I automatically felt it towards girls, and I'm talking from as far back as like 5 years old. I remember I used to play, and I always wanted to be, you know, the husband. I always wanted to be the person that took care of the family and had a family. So I didn't put a definition to it, but I certainly knew what it was.
So at what age, though, were you able to have the realization that it's not just a feeling, but it is? Like, did anything happen as a teenager, for example? When were you comfortable, or when were other people comfortable with who you are?
Well, I remember distinctly, in fact, I won't forget it. I was at Somerset Cricket Club, and I saw this lady that, you know, people back then said that, oh, she's gay, and she, you know, as after children and all of this sort of stuff. And I remember I was with a family member, and they said, oh, you know, she should be ashamed of herself because she likes girls. And I remember saying to them, well, I like girls. And they're like, oh, well, that's only play because you're young. You don't really know. But I was like maybe 10 years old. And I said it so distinctly because I absolutely believed it to be true, that I was only saying what I knew was inside of me. But the reaction that I got told me right then and there that I couldn't say it again. So from that point, I made a decision that I wouldn't say to anybody how I really felt inside.
But wasn't that frustrating in any way?
It was terrible. It was terrible. I mean, that to me is when I started to live a double life. And I consciously decided to live a double life.
In what way? Did you start to date guys?
I started to date guys. Well, I'm only, 10, 11. I mean, I started to consciously be around guys more and say things about guys that I really wasn't feeling, because I was probably feeling it for the girls, but I knew I couldn't say it. I started to create this life of what it would be like if I was going to be with a man for the rest of my life and have children and the picket fence and the great life. And I thought, well, that's the only way I'm going to be able to exist in this world. And so it became a constant struggle.
And at what point did you decide, I can't fake this anymore?
One night, I was in a park, and, I've always been a very religious person, and people were always telling me from a religious standpoint, you're going to hell, God doesn't love you, God doesn't love people like that. Well, they weren't saying it to me because I had never come out, And I remember being in this park and feeling that line between wanting to live and thinking that death was better, And then I was there. I was ready, because I said, listen, if this world doesn't love me, then God, you must be the only one. So maybe it's just better to be with God, you know? And so I was prepared to take my own life. And then this, I wouldn't say a light went off in my head, but I thought about it and I said, would God be happy with me? The only person that I felt really loved me for who I was, because I know God knew. And here I was saying, your gift of life wasn't valuable enough. And so from that point, I was just like, you know what? It's going to be what it's going to be. But still, at that point, I hadn't come up.
So you were actually contemplating suicide. Now, let's talk about your family for a moment. Did your family ever suspect it? Did you ever have that talk? You know how most young ladies have that talk with their parents about sex and stuff. Did you have that talk, like, Linda, what's going on?
Never, because I played the role. I fitted in, you know. I became what I thought people expected of me. So I said the things like, oh, I'm going to grow up, I like this guy or I like that guy. I went on a couple of dates all through my teen. And when I was 21, I became very serious about religion. And I focused on that because I said to God, okay, you saved my life, so I'm going to pay this sort of penance to you. And for like 10 years, it was just about religion. And I focused on religion. So when people say that all you got to do is give your heart to God and all you got to do is make a commitment to God and it will all go away, I can categorically tell you that it didn't go away, because how could it go away when this is who I am?
Okay. So we have to take a break, but when we get back, we're going to talk to Linda and find out what happened when she decided that talking to God just wasn't enough and she decided to live for herself. We'll be back in a moment. How did she out you?
Just told my parents.
Why? Did she feel that you were living a lie?
Well, she felt I was living a lie, and I was. But not only that, she felt that I wasn't making the type of commitment that you should make to somebody that you love.
More Straight Talk after these messages.